Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. I had two Toalson rackets to review. One was the 40 Love, which is a bit more of a control racket, more feeling, plushness, a little bit tougher to generate power. While this one, the Toalson S-Mach 97 Pro, these names of these rackets are too long these days. I find that to be the case almost always. This one is more of a power frame. It's definitely more of a racket with more stiffness. You can generate a bit more spin, a bit more power overall. 16-19 pattern, pretty heavy weight for the category, 310 grams unstrung instead of the standard 305 for these rackets, and 5 grams in tennis makes a big difference. But let's talk through the specs first. The 97 square inches, 27 inches length, 310 grams or 10.9 ounces. They allow for 5 grams up and down. That's their quality control guarantee from Toalson. Balance is 32 centimeters, around 6 points head light, and these are unstrung specs, and the string pattern is 16-19. So I did string it with their own string, Toalson Polygrande Pro Focus. It's the 1.25 gauge, 51 pounds or 23 kilos. I added an overgrip for the specs I'm going to read you. This is without the overgrip. 335 grams and around 32.3 centimeter balance with the overgrip, so 5 points head light, and a swing weight of 327. So when it comes to swing weight, this is the kind of specs I like personally. I really enjoy a swing weight nearing 330, but maybe not all the way. Sometimes when it goes above 330, I'm feeling it's too sluggish, so I'm pretty sensitive. I guess most players are, and swing weights is something that you should really take seriously. So when it comes to technology for this racket, there's nothing really amazing or fancy going on, which is the case for most rackets these days, obviously. They have some super elastic rubber inside the handle, which I think makes sense. It's to dampen vibrations. Yonex uses VDM tech, there's silicone in many pro players' rackets. It's some kind of filling in many rackets to dampen the vibrations that travels down from the racket to the handle. So any kind of filling in the handle makes sense, and I kind of like that. They have something called flex counterparts, which I think is just weight in the head here. It's 3 and 9, you can actually feel it on the frame. Looks a bit like a carbon fiber pattern and kind of like protrudes a bit from the racket. And I think this is extra weight. The throat, like the throat piece, hex torque frame. So the throat piece looks a bit like an arrow, not an arrow, but an arrow. So pure arrow, or kind of a spin oriented frame where it's more flat up here, so that the racket will move more aerodynamically for the kind of stroke that advanced tennis players produce. So an interesting spec there, kind of more like a Pure Aero VS, Yonex V Core 98. That's where this racket lands in the end. And that's also what my fellow playtesters and myself, we felt about the feel. It's a stiffer frame, similar to the Aero VS in stiffness, like a high to mid 60s with strings, in my opinion. I wasn't alone in testing this frame. I tried to bring a few guys. In these cases, most of them were advanced. That's good to keep in mind. I think this is a pretty difficult racket to use. So if you're not an advanced player with like good solid strokes and good footwork, I think it's going to be tough to use it. So Matthew and She, both skilled players, 5.5, 6.0 NTRP. That's the scale of 1 to 7. That I use a lot. The beginner is 1, the pro player is 7. So 7 is the max level that will be fed. And then you have that 1 to 7 scale. I like the 1 to 7 scale because it's like a 1 to 5 scale, but it gives a bit more room for nuance. And it's not all the way 1 to 10, which gets a bit silly. So I think 1 to 7 is a good scale. And that's what I'm going to keep using. So they both found good power. That was the main characteristic. The power was pretty good. Feeling, not so much. I think it felt a bit hollow. Some rackets, I tend not to like those rackets myself, where the feeling is that there's not enough solidity. Feels not like harsh on the arm, but the feeling is hollow, that there's nothing inside the frame. So that was a little bit not great in our opinion. I think we all felt the same. It does offer nice stability on impact. That's not a problem. The weight, the swing weight is pretty good. They both described it similar to the V Core 98 Aero VS, but they did lack some forgiveness from the string bed, like what you find in a 100 square inch racket, for example. So the string bed is a bit lively. It's kind of spin focused. I wouldn't say it's crazy open. It's pretty tight in the center, but it does feel like a little bit lively at times, and the ball likes to shoot out with some higher trajectory. So if you hit with a flatter trajectory, you're a player who likes to drive through the court, I think you're going to struggle a little bit with control at times with this frame. So definitely for you players who are using topspin on pretty much all your shots, that's going to be important, and like pretty heavy topspin. They didn't find that same issue with control. They are more topspin players than I am, and better players, but they didn't quite find that love in this frame either. It's not something that caught their attention straight away or felt like just amazing from the get-go. So these things are pretty important to keep in mind. Good choice, I think, overall, if you're an advanced attacking player and you're looking for a little bit out there option, not the typical brands. But I do find that many of the frames in the similar category, I prefer them a bit more than this one, because this one had a little bit of a raw feeling, and not in the best way, just felt a little bit hollow in my opinion. Not a bad racket, but it didn't convince any of us either. Like, we didn't feel like this had something that made it stand out. Comparing it to the Toalson 40 Love, I felt like that racket just brought a really nice plushness, pretty easy forgiveness, some good control. It had something really nice about that frame that makes you like it. This one, you know, so I would say. It's more my feeling. It doesn't have that excellent feel and response that frame has. But a decent modern frame, gives you a good amount of power, decent spin potential, good on serve. I think the serves came out pretty well because it's pretty maneuverable for the power you get. But overall, not the best feeling frame I've played, and there's nothing really that stands out in the marketplace in terms of feel and playability. But not a bad frame, and not a huge knock on that. But compared to the 40 Love, where I feel like, wow, this is another brand to take into consideration, this one was a little bit more of a not disappointment, but a little bit less interesting personally, with so many frames kind of specking up in a similar way. So those are my thoughts about the Toalson S-Mach 97 Pro. Decent frame, nothing outstanding, worth a try if you want to try something that's a little bit different and you want good power, but you need to be a pretty advanced player because the swing weight is nearing 330 in most cases, I think. Well, that's all for this review. I hope you found it useful, and thanks again for watching. Please support my work on Patreon, patreon.com/tennisnerd, where you can ask questions, and I publish some insider information that you won't find in my other channels, so please join there. If you want to support me in other ways, you can purchase anything through my links in the description below. Those are my affiliates, products and companies that I believe in, and I get a small commission if you purchase anything through those links. Big thanks. If you do, please also subscribe to the channel. That helps a lot. Trying to reach 30,000 subscribers before my 40th birthday, which is in about a month, 16th of Feb. So that's a small birthday present if you want to indulge. That's all for now. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.